From Ivy League to infamy, if you guys don't already know who Luigi Mangione is, you've probably been living under a rock. However, if you are someone who knows what Luigi Mangione's motive was, you are one of the very lucky few, and I'd love to talk to you. Here to discuss all of this case is my good friend Todd McGee, retired Massachusetts State Patrol trooper, and he is going to join us to discuss whether or not Mangione was actually going back to New York, because today is December 11th, and his ominous YouTube post was supposed to go live. I'm Collier Landry. Let's get into it.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in which Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife, Maureen.
The boy confidently told the jury it was his decision to testify against his father.
I heard a scream. I heard a thud. It's about this loud.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
I decided at an early age that our trauma should not be what defines us. It's what we choose to do with it that does. I'm here to share my unique perspective on true crime, mental health, society, and popular culture, and always with a slight sense of humor. I'm Collier Landry, and welcome to my show. Mover Nation, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Wherever you may be and however you may be watching or listening, thanks for making me a part of your day. This case with Luigi Mangione has been rocking the true crime, the YouTubes, the whole, everyone's talking about it, mainstream media everywhere, and everyone's trying to figure out a motive. However, today is December 11th, and this is the day when his supposed YouTube video was going to drop. I covered this in my video last night, doing a deep dive down his Twitter rabbit hole. And we're going to talk about it. I am bringing on my good friend, Todd McGee. He is a retired Massachusetts State Trooper. I had him come on a lot during the Karen Reed trial, and he is back to join the program and give us his time and his unique perception and insight. He is also, I believe, president of the 508 group. He will tell us a little bit about what he does as well. But I'm pleased to welcome him back to the program. Todd, what's going on, man?
Collier, good to be with you, my friend.
Good to be with you too, man. Every time I go and I do these lives, there's always something at the last minute, so I have to run downstairs and I run out of breath and I run back upstairs. I'm like, okay, here we go. So I'm like, I gotta find my Zen moment, man. It's good to see you, my friend. It's been a while.
Here we are at the end of the year. We did a lot together this year, and I'm glad to be back on the show.
I know, right? It has been a crazy year. To say the least. And what a way to end this year. And, you know, when I had reached out to you last week to have you come on the program, I thought we were going to be sitting here kind of trying to figure out where this guy is, who he could be, where he could be. And all of that happened in a flurry of activity in the last 48 hours. I was live when they apprehended him and started talking about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. And I've actually got his manifesto, which was published on Substack yesterday. For some reason, mainstream media has been taking it down everywhere, including on Reddit. But this gentleman on Substack posted it on his Substack to share it with the world. And I want to go through that with you as well. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it, maybe explore a little bit of conjecture. I don't know how this guy has turned into some sort of hero or folk hero. I hear that Amazon is sold out of the coats that he was wearing. I mean, there's so much going on. But anyways, I'd love to hear your take on this.
Well, you know, I think the game-changing moment was when we got that partial image when he checked in at the hostel. You know, trying to decipher a face through a mask, a hood, impossible. We got a good partial image of him, and you know, from a law enforcement perspective, if you have a digital still, that gives you a chance to measure it against and match it up against the DMV across the country. So, you know, the fact that he, you know, could have been from Pennsylvania, you know, currently in New York, you know, you're going to cross-reference every database in the states that you know him in his whereabouts to be. So that image, his world got a lot smaller once that image was released.
Yeah, I just, you know, how did he evade 5 days is a long time. And you always hear like the first 48, right? In like a murder investigation, or is it any investigation that it's the most important, those first 48 hours?
Yeah, that first 48 is legitimate. That it's got kind of a a ring to it when you say it, and it's obviously, it's good for TV, as we've seen a show that's been built years off of that phrase,
Oh
as
yeah,
far as
for
the
sure.
title. But in the real world of things, yeah, that the first 24 hours are critical, and the first 48 after that 48th hour, it's fair to say that things can become cold unless you get a partial facial recognition of a person that's wanted for murder. So you would hope that and I can tell you this, Collier, being here on the East Coast, once you enter into New York, but Manhattan proper, you're on a camera somewhere,
Yeah.
and it's impossible for you to hide in plain sight. So he evaded law enforcement for 5 days or so, but again, that it was just a matter of time before that image was going to be matched up, name put to the face, and then law enforcement, eyewitnesses, at the McDonald's did a great job, which is part of that see something, say something campaign that we hear so much about.
Yeah.
They did exactly that, and fortunately, we were able to get him off the street.
Do you think that he was a potential threat? Because I want to kind of go into, because today is December 11th. In this Twitter rabbit hole I dove into the night before last, or actually, no, I'm sorry, last night. I was taken aback when I saw this YouTube video that had this ominous posting. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to jump to this slide here. So this had this very ominous posting. It says, soon, December 11th. This is on his YouTube. All is scheduled. Be patient. Bye for now. And there's the close-up. Soon. Towards the end of the video. This is obviously like a trailer or whatever he had going on. What are your thoughts on that? I've heard some people speculate that they want to know what's in the backpack. Was there more ammunition? They were saying that he was in Pittsburgh, and so he was moving back into Altoona, back towards New York City, maybe for this December 11th date. What are your thoughts on that?
There's a lot of schools of thought there. His plans had to have changed once it was discovered that partial face image that was displayed all over the news. In fact, I've seen other media outlets that talked about how that image was literally blasted around the world. So
yeah,
had he had plans to escape to another country, there would have been notice of who he was, and that United States authorities were looking for him. As far as those plans go, had he kept his anonymity, he very well could have had additional plans to attack another healthcare professional. So, in this particular case, he went right for the CEO. It was in the middle of one of those conferences. Maybe he had the timeline. There's of the length of that conference, as well as other additional high profile employees from different healthcare companies. So, again, that information gleaned from the backpack, gleaned from that manifest. Hopefully, authorities will be able to get into that video and just really get into the mind of Luigi to understand not just the mental decline, but the motive. And it was released earlier today that he has his own medical challenges. I believe a fused spine.
Yeah.
Who knows if he was denied some type of insurance claim based on that injury? But there's a lot there. And I'm going to say this, Collier. Fortunately, he's arrested. Why?
Yeah.
Because we can get into his thoughts. Hopefully, the law enforcement community will do a great job, glean good information to understand what's wrong in this kid's life.
And he comes from a really good family, which I think is look, we've seen many killers and people like this who have an axe to grind with society, who have done horrific things, right? And most notably comes to mind is Robert Durst, right? and
Yes.
and his, because I think when you delve into, and I always say this on the channel, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a psychologist, I do not work in law enforcement, I'm just a guy who's been through a lot of shit. But when I think about the consequences, not only the consequences, but the decisions that these individuals make, that are, the irony being that he's someone who comes from privilege and he's anti-establishment against the privilege. Apparently his his family owns nursing homes or senior care facilities, which are not exactly known for the quality of healthcare that they provide people or the services that they render for the amount of money that they charge insurance companies. So it seems a little lopsided, his sort of bravado that he has against this anti-establishment, is reeling against this anti-establishment sort of situation. What do you think?
He may, based on the family business, he may have been exposed to elements of the healthcare industry that you and I have no exposure to.
Sure.
And based on that, it's clear he developed a grievance. And, that's part of my work is researching and training and educating others about targeted violence. This kid fits the profile of someone with a grievance and justifies violence. And that's right inside his manifesto. References to, I could use a bomb, but I'm going to make a direct attack against this CEO. So this is just a classic form of targeted violence of things that are out there in the world.
I'm going to try to pull up that, since you were mentioning that spine thing, spine and image, the X-ray. I'm going to try to pull that up here. I just got to export it out of my software, of course, because StreamYard likes to be difficult. But this is the shot of the spine that was on his Twitter, which I don't know if his Twitter is still up. I have no idea. But he again, having this spinal issue. I mean, you would think someone who comes from privilege would have no situation or no issues dealing with any of this financially, right? Come on, StreamYard.
Well, even with that, Collier, when you pull up the image, it's very clear that the surgery was a significant one.
Yeah.
And, even with financial means, that doesn't take the pain away. So, part of that mindset could have been, I'm suffering, so I'm going to make others suffer. I'm going to respond what I believe is in kind because of what I'm going through. And that's that dark pathway that individuals will tend to go down, all in a way to justify violence as a means to the end.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know a lot more about having served in law enforcement, served in the military. I'm sorry, your father served in the military, right? You didn't? Did you serve in the military? Your father served in the military. That's right. We have a flag behind it. We talked about this earlier this year. Sorry about that. Well, thank you for his service again. This, again, I mean, this looks like awful. I mean, thank God I've never, I always say knock on wood, I've never had any surgery, but those look like very significant screws in like his hip and lower back.
Yeah, I believe that's the base of the back. Based on what I heard earlier, that's the lower lumbar area, that L5 vertebrae fuse to, I believe, the S1 area. So that's basically where your hip girdle ties in together. So the description I'd heard was that those vertebrae bones will slip out, and this procedure is to fasten everything together. That I have my own back issues, not to this degree, and I know what kind of discomfort I'm in. So this was a significant surgery.
So you cringe when you see this photo?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it almost looks like it's manufactured. It's so bad.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let me get to his manifesto here, because this is there's some great photographs of him. So this is from Ken Klippenstein, who has a Substack. If you guys want to check him out, he was kind enough to post this on his Substack, not behind a paywall. So check him out if you're a Substack user. Give him a follow, give him a subscription. If you can. Exclusive, Luigi's Manifesto. Read the manifesto the media refused to publish. I've obtained a copy of suspected killer Luigi Mangione's manifesto, the real one, not the forgery circulating online. Major media outlets are also in possession of the document, but have refused to publish it and not even articulated a reason why. My queries to the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and NBC to explain their rationale for withholding the manifesto while gladly quoting from it selectively have not been answered. I'll have more to say on this later on how unhealthy the media's drift away from public disclosure is. But for now, here's the manifesto. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. Sorry, my banner is blocking this. Frankly, these parasites had it coming. A reminder, the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world. However, life expectancy is number 42%. United is the indecipherable largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but as our life expectancy, no. The reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption, greed, e.g. Rosenthal and more, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty, emphasis on the brutal. I want to break this down a little bit with you, my man, because first of all, as a law enforcement officer, when you see that, hey, nobody helped me, what does that tell you?
Well, I think there's some ego right there. There's some narcissism right there.
Yeah.
That sense that I'm going to champion this cause, and if I had to put a psychologist hat on, that's my first response to that.
Sure.
Even prior to getting into his words, Collier, there was a great effort by the media to take down these types of postings, regardless of where they live. But in the digital realm, the concern is copycatters. And so, you and I are having a conversation and provide some analysis around this stuff. But there's some other people in the same dark place that Mangione is, and they'll take this as a call to rally, and they'll start their own targeting of violence. So that's the main reason why, if anything, you'll see maybe a line or two rather than what you just read.
Because it ends up being a question of liability if someone was to take this and pull it from their media sources. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, it could be a source of liability, but I think the first issue and concern is, would this be a call to action where someone else going through similar circumstances would self-deploy and mobilize and find another unsuspecting victim to target and exploit and take their lives? So oftentimes, I know in doing research in active shooter, in the world of active shooter, this isn't necessarily the case with school shooters, but around individuals from it's a subgroup called incels, involuntary celibate. They heavily make reference to each other, former shooters, as they list their own manifesto, and talk about their grievances. Elliot Rogers is one of the leading people that always reference that it had a grievance against women, and that he's kind of championed the cause and originally, and he's looked on as a hero within that subgroup.
Elliot Rogers. Now, who is that?
He was an active shooter, and I believe he had targeted females. And he is a self-proclaimed involuntary celibate. Basically, this subgroup categorize themselves as women don't like us. They're the creepy guys that girls kind of cringe and don't want to be around. So they take it personal and they act on their grievances violently.
Yeah, I was making a documentary a few years ago about organized religion and a stigma around homosexuality in the Bible, and we got a hold of some tapes out of Texas, and there were these groups, right? And I remember we were going through the footage for the doc. We didn't end up using the documentary. I was terrified. And I think one of the people, I don't want to go off into another tangent here, but I do remember a Latino pastor in Texas rallying a bunch of white dudes that seemed to be in the congregation to take up arms against other Latinos. I just thought it was, I was like, oh, this is like these incel groups. I think when they're outside the United States, they call them what? Sleeper cells? Yeah.
They have a community, and whether it's this underground church or whether it's ideology driven, eventually someone in the group mobilizes, and someone in the group has more than a grievance that they feel is worthy of justifying. And again, it's the violence that they use, and it's targeted violence against non-combative civilians.
It seemed that he was a fan of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, having rated his book on Goodreads, and Kaczynski's brother has come out and just, obviously just slammed this and just said it's a terrible mistake if Luigi Mangione was influenced by his brother. He says, quote, "It really gives me a great deal of personal pain to think my brother's actions have in any way contributed to influencing a man like this to kill an innocent human being." Again, there's sort of that. I mean, obviously Ted Kaczynski was a little different, but there seems to be, I think a lot of people were shocked by this. I was shocked by this. I think I was mostly shocked that it was so brazen.
Yes.
In the middle of Manhattan. This is what I mean, I'm pretty sure I stayed at Hilton years ago.
Right. Brazen because he thinks he's righting a wrong. If you really think about and dive into the psychology of this, it was brazen because he's righting a wrong. And based on that manifesto, and there's probably other documents that we haven't had the privilege of seeing yet, but
sure,
it will tell a complete story about his mindset and where he's at, and how it's up to him to be able to right this wrong. He's going to champion the cause.
Yeah, and he references Michael Moore, the filmmaker, in his manifesto, which is, I'm assuming, who he's talking about, who made films like Roger and Me and Bowling for Columbine and Sicko, Sicko, which is about the healthcare industry, and I also think that Michael Moore is actively one of the most passive people. Yeah. As well, and that is not a violent person or does not condone violence, but it's interesting that he would have that sort of perspective because Michael Moore is very, very liberal, but has always been a champion of these causes of the people. Back to his first film, Roger and Me, relating to the GM plant moving out of Flint. But it seems like his ideology is a little all over the place. I was doing a deep dive, like as I said, on his Twitter, and he seems to be kind of all over the map. Is this kind of characteristic when you mention these incels or things of this nature? Is this sort of characteristic, this sort of wandering, lost young men that don't have any way, so this is their way out of this? I mean, this is a handsome guy from a wealthy family. This is not some.
He had everything going
schlep. For him. This guy, he's got a master's degree from Penn, and he's an engineer. I mean, the world is his oyster. I mean, obviously, he's got a medical condition, which sucks, but it seems like he had everything going for him, and. I often question this just based on my own experience. But look, my father was Ivy League educated, did go to Penn, also has a very similar sort of self-aggrandizement and narcissistic tendencies for sure, or psychopathy. But I don't understand it. How would you, if you were investigating this, how would you profile this guy, or how would you even line all this up?
A big part of the investigation, Collier, is the family members. Are they now going to come out and say, he was a little strange at, a week before Thanksgiving? I had seen something on his computer that struck me odd, but I didn't think it was much. And continually in these cases, the people that are closest to the perpetrator, they see the bizarre nature, but they don't connect the dots, and they certainly don't intervene. So that's a place that I want to land, and I want to speak to the people. So like right now, there was
Sure.
someone that spent time with him in the hostel. Oh, he was pleasant. Well, of course he was pleasant.
Sure.
Right? He wasn't out to harm anyone else. He achieved what his objective was. So we don't want to describe, although we need to demystify the action, the brutal attack of an innocent man, but we're not looking for a monster in this manhunt. We're looking for an unstable human being, 26-year-old male, apparently brilliant, right? Apparently accomplished on his own accord, but mental health. Back to the mental health conversation, and were there signs and indicators? Were there breadcrumbs, as I always like to say?
Yeah.
Were there breadcrumbs that were missed by the people that were closest to him?
You say breadcrumbs. I like to say Reese's Pieces.
Yeah.
little ET humor. No, in all seriousness, yeah. And supposedly he was estranged from his family for the last 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing, and that again could have been part of the decline. Again, there were text messages, there were things on posted on X. Where are you? Haven't seen you. So family members. He may have been estranged, but there were family members actively looking for him. So apparently he had enough financial means to kind of disappear and kind of ghost himself. But and then again, just spending time, 10 days or so in New York prior to the shooting, so he had financial means.
Is that how long he was there for? 10 days?
Yeah. He was scoping out ahead of time. So
wow,
that was significant.
That I hadn't heard. I hadn't heard how long he had been in New York for.
Yeah.
I guess we could have pulled that from there. Cat Loves Catskills, thank you so much for the super sticker. Apparently, he was recently, quote, off the grid. His family filed a missing persons report. Yeah, I believe his mother filed one in San Francisco in around the 10th of, around almost a month ago, I guess, in November. Yeah, I mean, back to the sort of the conversation of, the sort of trends of young people these days, the sort of loss and the sort of wandering and do you fear copycats from this type of situation?
Big time. That's real. I've seen it play out, and again, this is the research that I do in my line of work.
Yeah.
And copycat behavior is real. So, again, you and I will look at this case, we'll pick it apart. We'll analyze it. There's a lot to learn from these types of incidents. Someone else that is on that pathway to violence will say, I'm going to pick another industry that I have a grievance with, and I'm going to follow suit. And I'm going to reference Luigi Mangione as my inspiration to follow through with my own mobilization in targeted violence. That's very, very real. And again, as I stated before, that's why you don't see a lot of the writings of these individuals in circulation after they're either killed by police, they take their own life, or the arrest happens from law enforcement.
You hit on something right there with the taking their own life, right? That was something that I thought too, because of the sort of, the tightening of the the walls are closing in around him, right? And oftentimes you see individuals just when it's coming down, they're like, okay, I'm just going to end it. And did it surprise you that he didn't do that?
It's interesting. We had a situation, I believe it was in the first half of the year in Maine. There was an incident, and the shooter ended up taking their own life. There was a manhunt, couldn't find him.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep, the name escapes me, but it was similar. He went to a restaurant and a bowling alley. I think he killed 4 or 5 people, and then ended up going on a manhunt, and then they found his body. So 4 or 5 days after the fact. In this particular case, if he wasn't depressed per se, and that component of his mental health wasn't an issue, then the fact that his ultimate objective was to, in his mind, take out a bad actor in the space, then objective met.
Yeah, one of the things that's on the flip side too is, and somebody put it in their their chat comment, is there are a lot of people that are outraged because this CEO or this corporation was under investigation by the Department of Justice for insider trading. And supposedly the CEO was part of a group that had sold about $120 million worth of stock. And that raised a lot of red flags with the Department of Justice at the end of last year. Do people use this type of stuff as, mind the pun, ammunition and fodder to go after people? And how much threat are a lot of these corporate and CEOs and individuals that are serve on these boards or part of these corporations? How often are they under threat?
Collier, I know firsthand. I don't do dignitary protection work. However, I've got colleagues that are in that space, and they will tell you that those high-profile CEOs, they don't necessarily like that security detail. They understand that they may have had threats to their office. They may have had digital threats, phone, voicemail threats through the office, but it's an inconvenience to have a security detail around you. You're giving up a portion of your privacy. Sure. But there are what we would consider high-profile individuals, professional individuals that are not celebrities. We wouldn't call them entertainers, but they've got a 7-figure or an 8-figure net worth, and they're decision makers within their organization, and or recognize industry leaders, and have that kind of gravitas in their industry. So that is a very, very real thing. And you're seeing the cyber components within these corporations taking down the images of their senior leadership. That's to keep them safe. Based on the heels of one incident, you're seeing this type of reaction.
That's been happening recently because of this. Yes. In the wake of this incident.
Yes.
How does an individual? I mean, again, he's 26 years old. I think back to when I was 26, and I'm like, I'm an intelligent guy, but I don't think I was plotting to mastermind anything. How easy is it? Like, how did he get this information? I'm still dumbfounded how he's lying in wait. He knows what time he's coming out. He seems to, even the part where he's firing the firearm. That to me, I was talking to my, look, I grew up in Ohio. I have trained at Frontside Academy and Prompt. I'm proficient with, I'm not like law enforcement if I was in the military, but I know how to use a firearm. I'm not scared of guns. It's never bothered me. But I think about the accuracy with which he was able to use that, the sort of the cold-blooded nature. He doesn't have any military background or anything like that. How was he trained, do you think?
I think outside of just some personal motivation, unrelated to the assassination, but probably just had a fascination with weapons, the gun was a ghost gun, right? So it wasn't something that was a licensed gun. It wasn't purchased from anywhere that we would consider a traditional transaction.
They believe the gun that was used in the shooting was a ghost gun?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that suppressor that was on there, they were talking about the jams that appeared to be in the video. Seeing the full, for obvious reasons, for humanitarian reasons, we haven't seen the actual murder, but the description of the gun malfunctioning.
Yeah.
The weapon system wasn't manufactured by a Smith & Wesson, a Colt, a Ruger, right? So the tolerances that goes into the production of a firearm are extremely engineered.
Yeah.
Now, he had enough knowledge to get done what he had in his hands, and obviously was successful with the usage of it, but it didn't function like we would think a well-manufactured firearm from a reputable company. Also, the suppressor end on that does enhance accuracy. I don't know the relationship.
Oh, it does.
Yes, it does. Oh. You're extending almost like a rifle would be more.
Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
accurate than a pistol, than a handgun. So now you get something kind of in between. But also the muzzle suppresses the sound. So when you said earlier about the brazen attack, that suppressor really does suppress the sound, so you don't hear that explosion that you would think would come out of a firearm.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that he, again, this is all conjecture, right? But do you think that he acquired these items, or do you think that he arranged for them to be printed himself? I would imagine if they were, they have the firearm in custody, the ghost gun, they can do some sort of analyzation of the plastics. I'm sure they can find out where that came from, who ordered this from that, from this eBay account to this person to this. I mean, I'm sure like technology is amazing now on both sides of the coin. You can, commit crime, but you can also use it to solve it. And I think that's something that's pretty advanced nowadays. But is there a possibility that they could track that down?
Well, again, going back to your Reese's Pieces and my breadcrumbs, we don't do anything without a credit card these days. The other interesting thing, had he used an explosive, people don't understand that parts stay assembled. They don't just disintegrate into dust. And so you can get information off of a barcode, from something like a sticker on a product, a component. To your previous example of looking at the tolerances within that the material of the firearm, the components to make it, there's the website to be able to, do a Google search, and I want a 9mm firearm that has a suppressed end, hit enter, see what comes up, right? So all those things, from credit cards to securing any computer. That's the other thing, that is 1,000% sure there's a search warrant wherever he was staying with his parents or his last known permanent address to retrieve cell phone as well as computer, and there's your forensic investigation underway.
Yeah, and they supposedly have lifted a fingerprint off of the cell phone, the burner phone, I believe.
Yeah, they put him. They've got him at the crime. They've got it. It's all locked and sealed and delivered.
Oh, okay. Because I listened to his attorney talk, and said there's no evidence. There's nothing. So I'm like, huh. I mean, okay.
If that's what the family's paying you to say, pal, fine. They've got this kid dead to right.
And he doesn't seem to be. I mean, he seems to be very brazen about it. It doesn't seem like he's out there screaming, "I'm innocent."
Yeah, he championed the cause. He fixed the problem.
Yeah. What I mean, I'm. What happens to somebody like this when they become? Because he's in a prison. He's not in just like jail, right? He's in prison in Pennsylvania, correct?
I would imagine that he is in some type of what we would consider maximum security, isolated from other inmates. I would tend to think that he's this is going to sound kind of oxymoronic, but not in the best of conditions as far as holding facilities. He's in a highly secured place under constant monitoring. And also keep in mind, they want to make sure this kid doesn't, take his own life. So those are those concerns now that kind of the hunt is over, and that sense of sobering. What did I do? The reality of it, stepping away from the grievance. We really don't know what other bad decisions he may be up to.
I mean, there's photographs of him holding up a Happy Meal, so maybe he really did like McDonald's. That would not be the place where I would want to get caught. That would be my last meal of freedom. But who knows? I think that he's probably the sobering moment of like, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I would almost imagine too, as you know, my father is incarcerated, and there is a certain amount of obviously he murdered his wife, so he's not a feted person in prison, but there are people that go into situations that, I mean, this guy is everyone on the planet must know who this guy is in one way, shape, or form. I mean, at least in civilized society, if you will. I think that would he be someone that when he steps in behind bars and he goes out into like the general population, is he going to be an individual who is feted or celebrated by the not only the guard, the inmates, but even the guards potentially?
Yeah, it's really bizarre how people find their fame or infamy, and he is I would say would qualify as someone that a Charles Manson, right? Horrific part of a very horrific act, and for some reason they have a following. I know Ted Bundy. State of infamy. He was an artist. People were paying crazy money for his paintings, I believe, and it's hard for the rational mind to make that connection, but it happens.
Yeah, it's what a life, what a choice. A lot of people were saying, well, he's, and look, this is the United States. He is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, but he's shouting from the rafters, "I'm the hero." He's on camera, and he's caught with all the ramblings. It seems. I mean, how does the defense? I mean, I know you're not a lawyer, but how does the defense even shape up with something like this?
I would think that the only defense could be some type of mental health claim, unstable mind. So does that avoid a death penalty? I think New York has death penalty. So, now you've got an attorney that will advocate for a lighter sentence and call that a win. I just, to your point, being captured with everything and whatever he discarded, capturing fingerprints on that to connect him to those items, there's no defense. There's absolutely no defense. All the attorney can do is just point to state of mind.
Cat Loves Catskills asked, do you think that he wanted to get caught?
I think subconsciously, how long can you continue to run? How long can you continue to, his plan was obviously executed according to how he had played it out. But then there's the post incident now. It's over. And does my post plan look the same now that it's over? And now they know who I am. And now people are looking for me. Authorities are looking for me. I just can't get on a plane and travel. I just can't get on a train and travel. I've got to use these other kind of stealthy methods of transportation. That takes a lot of brain activity, and in that sense of I'm getting tired. And I think that's where the mistakes started to happen.
That's a really good point, that his cognitive sort of burnout may have played a part in all of this too.
Big time.
That's a lot to keep. That's a great point. That's a lot to keep track of. I think that a lot of people don't think about that. Like, he could have ran forever. He could have. It's like, that's a lot. That's a long time to go underground in a way, especially if you're used to having your freedom. I mean, I'm assuming he was very used to having his freedom.
Collier, think about this morning. You woke up, you started your day, you put your feet on the ground, right? We thank the good Lord for another day.
Amen.
Someone else, okay, I've been wearing these clothes for the last 7 days, 8 days. I'm hungry. I'm running low on cash. Where can I go? Right, your thoughts are not consumed with average everyday human thoughts.
Yeah.
You're in this survival mode, and that's tasking. That's just, the brain can't keep up with that pace for long extended periods of time. And if you want to stay on the run, and if you want to be able to evade capture, that's the mode that you're in 24/7, 365, based on that decision.
And that's what our men and women in service are trained to do. Like, when they're in a state, when they're in survival mode, but they're trained to do that, to live that way. This is just an individual who went to, it's an Ivy League kid, a preppy kid from a good family, a wealthy family. I want to sort of pivot a little bit, because as disturbing as the crime is, and brazen and everything, I mean, I think a lot of people were in shock. I was like, somebody messed me up. I said, what happened? Assassin, On the flip side, what do you make of the public response to all of this?
Shocking, to say the least. We could probably do another show on things we don't like in society, right?
Right.
And we can start in our individual states and then ramp it up, to the country. And again, thank God, because we have a First Amendment. We can speak our minds, right? And we can express our likes and dislikes. But it's, no one deserves that type of to be targeted and assassinated, shot in the back. I just don't know how. And again, I realize people have gone through some horrific things, and they've got some of their own blame, and they have their own grievances, but they didn't go out and do what Mangione did. Yeah. So I'm just shocked that people are taking the posture, in almost, again, we talked about the infamy piece. They're supporting the infamy piece is my take on it.
Yeah, and I can imagine. I was telling a friend last night. I said, Brian Bardsley, who from LTL Media, friend of the show. We were talking about it last night on our little podcast thing that we've just started doing, and I said, it's going to play out like Joker Folly Do that just came out a few months ago, which is a great film for anyone that said everybody hates on it. I mean, it's a fantastic film because it's a very interesting social commentary on our consumption of true crime, our consumption and obsession with these seductive and salacious headlines, and the rallying behind the Joaquin Phoenix character playing the Joker, and he's in trial and all this stuff, and people are dressing up like him in the courtroom, and outside the courtroom they're rallying and all this, and then he's convicted, and it's like nobody cares. Like, you know what I mean? And I can imagine this playing out in a very similar way. I mean, look, you saw firsthand with the Karen Reed trial, which is, I think, going to be, microscopic compared to this situation, given the worldwide publicity from Jump Street of this particular crime. But you see that polarization. I can only imagine what is coming down the pike. What about you?
He's going to have his fair share of supporters, 100%. There are going to be people that are going to be not just vocal online on the online social media platforms, but he'll have his own presence of people standing out in front of the courthouse as he comes to and from each day for trial. And it's again, it's part of our First Amendment, right? That's protected speech. Yeah. But that being said, he's going to have his fair share of supporters, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I just it boils down to right and wrong, right? And again, many people have issues with the healthcare system, and they don't go out and they don't do this, right? I look at, and you talked earlier about going back into the family. This is going to, I mean, look, because I'm the son of both a victim and a perpetrator, right? And I know that this sort of admonishment or the chastisation or excoriation, whatever, hyperbolic word you want to use to describe it, there is definitely a stigma that follows you around, whether you like it or not, whether you do everything you can to bring justice to that perpetrator or not. It does follow you. And I can't even imagine a family just being blindsided by this because of his selfish actions. And this is just going to mar their family he's a young man. So he's got a good 50, 60 years ahead of him. It's going to be around for a long time. And, when police go to question the family, like, what does that look like? I mean, are they sensitive about it? Is everyone a suspect in it? What does that look like?
Great question, Collier. There is some level of empathy in you're really trying to tap into their knowledge of things, and the best way to do that is a soft approach. And you're asking people to revisit things that they dismissed, and you're trying to help them fasten this whole mystery together. We have the manifesto. We have the information that you read earlier, but that's a snapshot. That's just a snapshot of what was going through his mind. So the police investigation, along with the digital forensics of examining where he got the firearm, the thought of the firearm. Why didn't he? My question is, since it was so brazen, why didn't he had the financial means? Why didn't he just go buy a firearm? Well, that lends itself to this whole mastermind plan that he thought of being as discreet as possible, in the shadows, this mysterious figure. And that was just part of the whole mystique, part of the whole plan.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and law enforcement, it would behoove them to move gingerly through that process with the family.
It's almost like he was seducing himself along this whole journey, apparently.
In a sense, I would say yes.
Yeah, he's the anti-hero. He's when you think about it, the level of calculation that goes into, I mean, again, I'm still astonished this was a 26-year-old kid with an Ivy League education who was living in Hawaii. Like, brother, that's good living. Just stay there.
Yeah. Stay there. Yep.
It's a beautiful place, man. It doesn't get much better.
You get great weather to heal yourself back to health.
Yeah, exactly. Good food, good environment. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, this is, the thing I always talk about on the show, the consequences of violence that we don't really think about, and the ramifications, because now the ripples just go out to everywhere. They're going to be tracking down, they're going to be tracking down friends from high school, college, family members. Now the cousin is a Republican who's part of, running for Congress or some, he's politically active, and now they've been going after him. On social media. So it just reaches out. The spires just go out everywhere, the spokes, if you will. And it's just, the collateral damage is quite awful. And then on the flip side, you have, the victim in this case, where he, you've got a couple of young boys, I believe he had, obviously he has a wife and a family, and, whatever was going on in his world has now come to a grinding halt. Now you have two families that are grieving over something that is just very, very senseless. And I was floating this on the show the other day. If it's almost like if he had turned around, he had the gun trained on him, and if he had said, "This is what you're going to do," and maybe they could have actually sat down and had a conversation, you know?
Yeah.
I almost wonder if that would have been a thing, because this is an educated, Luigi Mangione is obviously an educated individual. You could have an educated conversation with the CEO and say, "This is what this is," you know? It could have gone so many other ways.
In that sense of now we're eye to eye, right? And does now the human brain kind of switch from predator to rational thought, right? So amygdala, hippocampus shifts back to prefrontal cortex type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Or is it, nope, this is the plan, and regardless of what angle I have, I'm seeing it through. So, those are the questions that will remain forever in this case.
Yeah, and the shooting in the back is always something that's, that is, cowardly for sure. Not looking at a man there. I think if he had turned around, it may have been a different story too.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, you were touching a little bit on the planning of this. This didn't come together overnight. This took a lot of doing. And so, obviously, Luigi has a incredible ability for critical thinking and use that skill set in this horrible, horrific plan. But that almost superpower, if you will, he used that for bad, and came up with this very well thought out and executed plan. Unfortunately, and I don't say that to give him credit. It's just understanding that when you understand a complete stranger's schedule and you're leaving state to be able to conduct this assassination, and you position yourself hiding in plain sight in front of his hotel. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. You identified, an unregistered gun as your means in choice of weapon. You have a suppressed end. There's so much to unpack in this particular case.
How long do you think it took him to plan all this?
Had to be months.
Yeah.
Had to be. Right. And why this CEO guy, right? You've got to go through and research healthcare systems. And then, okay, well, who are the decision makers in those healthcare systems? Well, this healthcare system is number 5 as far as largest market cap.
Yeah.
So you start going down the rabbit trail. That takes time. And then now you've got your target. Now, what are you going to do? Now you figure out your plan. Oh, I'm going to create a manifest. Okay, now I've got my manifest. Okay, now I got to think about how I'm going to travel to this location. Okay, once my plan's done, what's my escape? That takes a lot of brain energy, man.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy and time to figure all and put that plan together. What clothes am I going to wear? How am I going to carry all this stuff? I want to be comfortable. How much money do I need? How long am I going to be away for?
Yeah, supposedly he was caught with something like $10,000 in cash or something. It's just what we heard. There's, they found the Monopoly money in the backpack in the park, but he was caught with a lot of cash on him. That supposedly, I guess we're going to see as more details unfold. How available is all this information once law enforcement, do they begin to disclose this to the public? Are they required to do that, to say this is what we found, this is the evidence? I mean, what does that look like?
At best, in the press conferences, I would surmise that we'll get dribs and drabs. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind that everything that has been captured as and collected as evidence, that's going to go to trial. And so that evidence is preserved. And so the nuances and the details, those also will be preserved. So we'll get 20% of something in the manifest, or we'll get a piece of an eyewitness statement. Those types of things. We're not going to get a full-blown description of what's been collected and then submitted as evidence.
Yeah, and the charges that he's facing. What are those charges that he's facing in Pennsylvania?
He was captured with the firearm, so there's going to be a weapons charge. There could be some type of conspiracy, but again, he's fighting extradition back to New York, where the major charges will take place. And my understanding is the way the different states will work is that the charges in Pennsylvania will come secondary, meaning they will try him after New York, the New York trial is over.
That was my next question. You read my mind.
Yep.
Yeah, I was wondering which ones. I mean, you would naturally think because it's obviously a higher charge that they would go for that, but yeah. Well, this young man's life has been turned upside down by his own doing, and you think this will be a speedy trial? You think this will be a long, drawn out thing? You've been looking at like 2026 for this thing. What do you think?
Oh my goodness. Hard to tell. And again, New York has been pretty active with a lot of different cases.
Yeah,
I don't see him coming to trial in probably the next 6 months. There's discovery, right? His attorney is going to go through all the evidence, and so there's a lot going on. And again, we have to understand he comes from means, so you never know what type of fight is our family members going to put up good money to give him a proper defense. That we could see something like that, which means they draw things out, they stall, all those different tactics and shenanigans that lawyers know how to do.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a surprise to me here.
It is going to be a circus. That I guarantee. That's the only thing I know. It's going to be an absolute circus.
You nailed it.
People buying, outfits online, dressing like him. He's going to have an army of people. Were asking, "Oh, where's the GoFundMe for this?" It's it's wild.
It's already happening. Yep. We're 24 hours into the arrest, and look at all the circus sideshow stuff.
Yeah. And then you have this on the flip side. You have this company, United Healthcare, which was under investigation by the Department of Justice in a completely unrelated situation.
And people are going to point to that, Collier, and they're going to say, "See, he had it coming to him."
Yeah,
that's the other part of that conversation.
Which is a little scary. For sure. So you said that these boards of these other companies are now starting to hide their board members' photographs off of their websites and things like that, taking all that information down.
Yeah, their senior leadership is it's all being masked. It's all being taken down. They're in response to, could this happen to me? That fear and self-interest is what motivate. I always say two things motivate people: fear and self-interest. In this case, it applies.
Yeah. Do you think any of this is actually going to change the way that the healthcare system works or the way corporate structures work in this country by this action?
The dollars are too high.
Yeah.
If you think about it, who owns the biggest buildings? The insurance industry.
Yeah.
Who has all the money, right? In not to state the obvious, but insurance companies are not designed to pay out. They're designed to keep.
Yeah.
They're designed to keep their revenue. And we can all say, "Oh, we got good insurance and I'm covered. I'm covered if something bad happens to me." Well, that may be the case, but press a vague situation and put a claim in on it, see what happens. And here's the other thing. How many times have you heard where people put in legitimate claims and then they're dropped, their coverage is dropped?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it's a homeowner claim. Based on the loss, the insurance company comes back and says, "Okay, all right, we're going to pay you out this time, but we're not going to carry your policy anymore."
Yep.
Right? Those policies are not going to go away.
What a quagmire.
Yeah.
And as I was saying before, the CEO, it's not like he's the decision maker. He's a pawn too.
Not by himself.
He has to answer to a board and the financial interests of his, 7, 8, 9 figure board members
100%.
who are there. So it's almost, it's like you're shooting the messenger, no pun intended.
Right.
He's the face, but he's not the guy at the top of the food chain.
He's not making decisions in a silo, for not at all. And so again, to what end? And that goes back to the copycat concern, that someone's having the conversation you and I are having right now, and they end up saying, who's next? That's what they settle on. Who's next?
Oh, it's chilling to think about.
Scary stuff.
It's very chilling to think about. Todd, what do you got going on now?
So, lots going on. Working on a project for 2025 to work with Department of Homeland Security on a targeting youth violence campaign. Working with some colleagues to, one, help identify how youth are being recruited into gangs. And you'd be amazed, Collier, that they're utilizing online gaming to find vulnerable at-risk youth. And also, we talk about the opioid epidemic. We're also seeing that fentanyl is being sold by the hands of youth. And the other concern is where we have this immigration concern. You've got these marginalized families, and they're all living in the not best of circumstances. Sure. And that 13, 14-year-old young man is hearing my family has a need, and I've got someone in my ear saying, hey, here's $1,500, just drop this package off or make this handoff. Sounds pretty attractive. And if you get caught, because you're under the age of 18, they're just going to give you a slap on the wrist. You'll be out within an hour back on the streets. Yeah. So that's a huge concern. And then part two that this project is digital threat assessments, understanding how individuals on a pathway to violence, specifically within our school systems, our youth are leveraging social media prior to the attack. So we want to help educators and school resource officers better identify those indicators and connect those dots. So that's a fresh project that I'm embarking on for 2025. Hopefully funded by Department of Homeland Security.
Well, that sounds amazing, man. And I'd love to have you back on the show just to talk about that. Forget everything else, just to talk about that, because that sounds like an amazing program. And again, video games are how they get into these online communities, and it's you see it a lot. I was talking to Chris Hansen about this like a year ago. Same thing, and he was saying, and I was like, how are these perpetrators finding their victims? He goes, through online video games. He's like, that's the worst part. That's the number one way they're attracting their victims. And I thought, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. I don't have children, so these are things that I don't necessarily think about. But yeah, it's pretty serious. And obviously the fentanyl epidemic. I mean, I come from Appalachia. I know exactly how that's ravaged my area of the country, and now pretty much the entire country.
Yeah, it's such a huge problem. Oftentimes these things get politicized, and we start talking about China, Mexico, and okay, I get that, but
sure.
On our at a grassroots level, there's so much going on that average Americans don't understand, that we really need to wrap our head around. So, another thing that we don't know this to be the case, but we want to make sure that within public safety, that the gang unit officers, they see the school resource officers as partners, and that they're not working in silos. And the challenge with that is that there's different mission, right? If you're in a gang unit, you're in a public safety lock 'em up mission. If you're in a school, if you're in an education environment, you're a school resource officer in a private school, you're probably exposed to what's called restorative justice, which is looking at the whole child and why is the child behaving this way, and what resources does the child need. And the last part in that list is handcuffs. So we want to make sure we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that even internally within police departments, they're working and see each other as partners.
Yeah, and then you have systems like the foster care system, which I was a part of for a good year of my life. Those are feeders into this type of situation, which is just The system, man. It's
it's broken. Yeah.
Very, very broken. Well, I commend you on your efforts to help heal and repair that system. And good luck with your goals in 2025. And I want to hear more about this. If you wouldn't mind, send me an email. I'll put it in the show notes of today's episode so our listeners can find all your resources that you have available.
Great to see you, Collier.
Great to see you too, Todd. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. My guest today was Todd McGee. He's a former Massachusetts State Patrol officer. I had him on earlier in the year talking about Karen Reed. We were discussing the case against Luigi Mangione and his possible motives and copycats. What a conversation. Heavy stuff, guys. This has been a heavy last couple of days. I don't know what to say, but Mover Nation. We get through another one. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to have, at the end of the month, we're going to screen my film, A Murder in Mansfield, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on December 31st. And that is going to be a members-only screening. However, we will be selling tickets for the general public as well. If you're a YouTube channel member or a Patreon supporter, you get discounted tickets to this event. So we're going to watch the film on New Year's Eve, which is the time that my mother was the day that my mother was murdered. So this will be a great way to celebrate her and honor her. This is my film, A Murder in Mansfield. If you haven't seen it, you can also purchase it in the links below the video. Also, we have Collier's AV Club, which is also this coming Sunday. And we are going to screen my new episode of Oxygen's A Plan to Kill. I have an episode called Noreen Boyle, named after my mother, and I'm in it telling the story of how myself and the detective solved my mother's murder and the police work and the work that went in behind that. So check that out on Oxygen at 8 p.m. Eastern Time this coming Sunday, December 15th. We are going to do a members-only screening of that as well, and Patreon supporter screening. So you can support the show by clicking the link below, join the membership, join the Patreon. I would greatly appreciate it. At the very least, if you could hit that like button, guys. Where are our likes at? I don't even know. I haven't looked on the YouTube yet. 171 likes, but we have 400. We had 400 people, 500 people here. Come on, guys. Smash that like button on your way out the door. Also, if you're being so inclined, your holiday shopping is upon us. You can use our Amazon Associates link, which is amazon.com/shop/Collier Landry. It is a great way to support the show. It doesn't cost you a dime. Just shop as you normally do, taking advantage of all those Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Happy Thursday deals that are coming in, Prime Fridays, all the deals that are available during the holidays. When you're doing your Christmas shopping, you can use our link to shop, and we get a small commission, which goes to help support the program. It's a great way to support. And obviously, always the freest of ways, smashing that like button, subscribing, sharing this episode with your friends and family, and anyone you think would enjoy this information and this channel. I greatly appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so much to those who supported with super stickers and super chats on this episode. And a big thanks once again to my guest, Todd McGee. I will have links to all of his stuff in the show notes of today's episode as well. On that note, Mover Nation, here's the outro. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support today's program, please click the links in the description of the show notes of today's episode. And if you like this video, check out this one right here or this one right here. And don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps with the algorithm. On that note, I'm Collier Landry. I'll see y'all on the next one. Good girl, Marisol. Good girl.